Hello, and welcome to the Weshtern Philosophy Podcast. Two friends with oceans and oceans discussing the unseen forces in our lives through the lens of music, mystery, and crack. Today, we are joined by entrepreneur, surf instructor, actress, and sustainable fashion stylist Emily Ryan to talk about change and adaptation.
But also the fact that the only person who's really hoping you hit that window is you. Do you know what I mean? The only person, that person you told him and you're like, oh man, I'm going to hit that plate of window. You don't do it. That person isn't like, can't believe you didn't hit that window. You know what I mean? He's more like, man, he tried to hit that window. And that's kind of like the putting the weight on kind of like you are your biggest and worst critic. But it doesn't, you and I understand, it doesn't matter if I hit the window or not, but I'm still going to try and then we're going to experience it. And then if we hit it, yay. If not, still kind of yay.
Yeah, brother, how's this going?
How's this going? Well, it started.
It started. Okay, yeah. Nice.
That is the perfect, oh God, okay. And then nothing changes and you just your whole body went lopsided.
I haven't put on my persona.
Let me just get changed for this.
So, we're here
That's a joke, isn't
with Emily Ryan. Everything's a joke, Emily. Everything's a joke.
Nihilism. There we go.
There we go. But we're here with Emily Ryan, and I'm going to try to introduce you, Emily, but given the topic of today's podcast, well, you wear a lot of different hats. You do a lot of different things, and that's kind of what we're going to talk about. So you have been a high-level swimmer, you've been involved in social media, you make movies, you assist artists, you're involved in fashion. Have I missed anything out?
Yeah.
Okay.
I ran a vintage clothes store with a partner for a few years. I've definitely worked a lot of jobs. I ran a kitchen before. I was by accident. Okay. I've definitely worked in a lot of bars for sure. And I worked in call centers.
Right.
I'm a lifeguard. I'm a swim instructor, surf instructor.
And that kind of ties back into today's topic, which was chosen by Emily and is quite appropriately adaptation. Yeah, because when we approached you,
I thought it was change, Daddy.
It changed. we changed, and now you have to adapt.
And it was something I wanted to touch on because it was more so change. Again, we agreed in the car over here that it was very much so the physical, things that are happening that are out of your control. But what it really is about, what we talk about, is kind of your approach towards change. So adaptation is a version of that change, Daddy.
Thank you, Emily, for including me at my own podcast. Me and Anthony are going to have a stiff word after this is done.
Sorry.
No, save it for the pod, Bart. It's all content.
It's my podcast now.
I'll put up my hands, actually. I think the energy I came in with and just straight away started chatting to Emily, we were like, right, come on, let's get the gossip going. So, in fairness, I think it's my fault that nobody clued me in until he hit record, and he was doing all the work as well. So, Anthony, I won't get too handsy with you now.
Yeah,
after.
Well, we'll see.
Aw.
So,
here's open.
Adaptation.
My podcast now.
Memily.
Sorry.
Yeah.
This is my new hat.
I would not be surprised.
We're in Emily's house now. Why, Emily? Why adaptation / change, and why now?
Definitely, I'm at a transition point. I'm doing one of those big change and adaptation moments. And also, it is the constant and one of the biggest guarantees in life. I think it's definitely something we can all relate to, as well as appreciate or not appreciate. So it could be a very controversial topic because, for the record, I know Anthony and Bart from the hometown. You guys, I know you've been coming into my store. And I'm really touched that you asked me to be on the podcast, and
We're delighted you're here.
Yeah, it was. I was really I was really touched by that and honoured, and I still am. And we'll see at the end.
Yes.
But no, it was just on the most given thing to do was I thought maybe you want to ask me about sustainable fashion because I've been in it for the last 2-3 years and continue to be in the future, And then you're like, well, we don't know. What would you kind of pick? And I was just like, genuinely, I think, well, let's keep this as raw and real as possible. Let's talk about what's happening. And I'm going through a big change, but also who isn't, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And it's a very something we could all talk about here. You know, I could
that's really
go
true.
on and on about sustainable fashion and you could appreciate it, but it would just be me talking.
Yeah.
You know, not that you don't know anything. It would just be completely my side of it.
Which is good too. But I think you're right. I think there's a lot of people going through. I mean, we had COVID. We had this thing that happened that had never happened before. We were locked in our homes for 2-3 years, you know? And the way people adapted or didn't adapt to that, I think we're really feeling the consequences of that now. I think if COVID was 2.5 years, I think we'll be at least double that, dealing with the fallout from it.
Well, it's kind of like they say about the whole breakup thing, you know, however long the breakup is, half it, and then that's how long it'll take to get over it.
Right. Yeah, I doubled
It's
it
like,
there,
yeah, you doubled it.
But that's the cynic in me. But,
Oh, no.
yeah.
Change. I think it's just, it is one of those quotes that I definitely always live by. It's just, you know, even when you get comfortable and you've made it and you're like, hey, this life is really like this right now. I'm really loving it. And then it's like, oh God, it's changing. And a lot of that time that can be like stressful. That can be kind of like, oh, I had it figured out. And it's just like, no one ever really has it figured out. It's just accept the change, and your approach to it, the adaptation, is kind of like, yeah, it's accept it for what it was, love it for what it was, appreciate it for what it was, but then kind of also realize that there can be something just as much that you can like as much or not like as much, but it's all a learning curve.
But what I love about the idea as well, when you were saying it there, I'm thinking like, if you're comfortable with change, like it sounds like you are, or trying to, oh, thanks, buddy. Or Anthony's handing us out some notepads.
They're all beautifully coloured, like autumnal colours.
Katie picked them up.
They're stunning.
So Bart, you get to choose between brown and red. You've gone for the brown.
I'll go brown,
that'll be yours.
But my natural woody colour. No, but like when you're saying that, like even, you know, getting comfortable with change or being comfortable with change, what I love about that is the idea is that there is something in you or in your experience that is outside of change, watching the change, kind of, you know what I mean? It's kind of like, or you're trusting. Well, for instance, we were talking about this yesterday. Like you do fashion shoots. You're a lovely person to look at. If you would be attached to that wholly, that'd be a shit show.
Yeah.
Also, to be honest, we wouldn't have you on. I hope I'm not being too much like, but
give it to
like,
me, Bart.
No,
give
no,
it
but
to
I
me.
mean, no, well, I mean it in a really positive way.
Yeah.
Is that stuff?
I identified through my looks and nothing else.
Yeah, it's a bit like when people go to see a comedian and it's a really famous person and they say, yeah, that lasts 5 minutes, and then they need to be funny.
Yeah.
It's like if we sat down with someone beautiful, they need to be great crack and a nice person, because otherwise that's going to be done in a couple of minutes. But I love that if you're going, everything is changing. Yeah. Our bodies are changing. Our lives are changing. You're kind of, it feels to me like you're cherishing something beyond that. And that's cool. Yeah. Like that's something I want to connect to. You know?
Yeah. And I think, well, one thing about the pod is that we do want people that can look at the thing they're doing from the outside, you know, and maybe place things in a slightly wider context. And I think that's something you've always been very, very good at, Emily, is that you're very good at what you do, but you're also very good at contextualizing what you do within
do you think?
greater patterns. I think so, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, that's really nice to hear.
Yeah.
Wow.
But I'm sorry that I actually completely sidetracked you, I think, because I was moved by what you were saying.
Sidetracked me, because my biggest worry about this podcast is that I'm going to ramble on and go on from five different stories.
You're here with two professional ramblers now. Don't be worried.
Oh, God, this is going to be so fun. Yeah, I think that's, to go back to what you're saying, Bart, like, it is, and I think there's a few elements to it. I mean, there's the elements of you learn through something, through experience and everything. I think the exposure to change has just been very big for me. Personally, I have chosen that a lot through my life. It's so funny. I did a Q&A yesterday on my Instagram, which I really enjoy because I get to connect with my followers and I get to dig deep as well as have a bit of fun with it. And it's really big for me to connect with people and to build like a community anywhere, even online. And basically, someone asked me, like, what do you think are your best qualities and your worst qualities? And I said, well, I think it's a bit egoistic for me to answer that. So I'm going to pick someone that knows me very well. So I asked my dad, and my dad was like, your best qualities are like you're outgoing, you're open-minded, you have a good heart. Your worst qualities are that you just move on from the next thing. You never see the bigger picture, which I would argue, Dad. But it's just the big picture, you know, you can never control the bigger picture. So I never put too much weight on the bigger picture. It's like I can see where I can go, but at the same time, there's many places where I can go, and sometimes I can't control all that. But, and then he was also just like, you kind of give yourself over to people a lot more. You invest yourself in others rather than yourself, which is definitely true and something I'm working on. But the main thing, with the funnily enough, his worst being like, and I love you, Dad, but being in, you know, your traditional 50-year-old man who likes to be in the same job and thing, his worst quality is something that I would pride myself as one of my best, in the fact that you kind of jump from one thing to the next. And I'm like, that is something that I've always like, I don't exactly pride myself in not sticking it out, but it's more so when something's either not working or something needs a change, I won't just keep going for the next 5 years and because it's comfortable or because, you know, it's not giving me life anymore, but I decided I would commit myself to it. I'm like, no, I will just move country. I will just completely go off and jump into the next thing. And it's terrifying. It's never fun. Like this isn't something I enjoy doing and just ditching. Like if I'm in something, I want it to work. But it's a strength of mine in the way that I have done it so much, in the way that I've moved from different countries all the time. And if something's not working, I will just think outside and go. But and COVID was also kind of like one for many people where it was out of their control and they had to just uproot and go with their life. Whereas at that point, I kind of done it about 4 times. And I wasn't exactly comfortable with it, but it was an element of, okay, you did this before, you can do it again. And dangerous to get into that mindset.
I think it's appropriate at certain points in your life. You know, I think you learn so much by doing that. But something that came up while you were talking there is that, you know, that quote, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. I've never understood that quote. To me, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting the same result, because something's always changing. Like saying you do the same thing over and over and you'll always get the same result implies that you are in complete control of your world. And I think that's why on the drive over here, me and Emily were talking about change versus adaptation. And really, maybe you can't talk about one without talking about the other. But to me, change are the circumstances that surround you over which you have no control, and adaptation is your response to that. So moving forward in life is always an interplay between these two things. And while a lot of people, like maybe old school lads like your dad, might have this approach of like, no, if you really knuckle down and really grit your teeth and, you know, you can get through anything, you can accomplish anything. And certainly that's true to an extent. But to me, I've always been a bit more like you, Emily. I'm like, oh, I'm putting 200% effort into this and nothing's coming back. So maybe I just change tack, you know? Maybe I try something else. Maybe this is, you know, not the best use of my energy.
No, totally. And it really is terrifying to have that thought, because you have the thought. I guarantee you, every person that has that thought does not move in it straight away. They sit in it, they feel it, they're not sure about it. And we are humans of adaptation from the very beginning of evolution. So we are always trying to protect ourselves, whether it be emotionally, physically, like it is just in our makeup. So to protect yourself, you're like, no, this is safe. No, this is the right way. There's all these things kind of fighting against you. It's like this inner kind of like, I wouldn't say emotional war, but there's a feeling, there's a gut instinct, there's a, you know, this is fine. There's nothing wrong with this. But at the same time, if it's not giving you life, air quotes, but also just kind of adding to your purpose, or, you know, there's elements there where it can't, sometimes it's not big enough, that feeling for that change. It's not important enough to do any of that, but it builds up over time. And it's a feeling you can't really ignore, whether it be your work life, your love life, your just even kind of what you do with your hobbies, you know, even if like, it's actually, funnily enough, because I was such a big swimmer, and I have a few friends who have gone off and gone to the Olympics and spent their whole teenage years swimming, and a lot of their 20s. And I did it all the way up until around 18 is when I kind of stopped doing the 5-6 days a week, 5 a.m. in the morning. Like I was just like going into college and no one was telling me to do it, so I didn't do it. But as a kid, you know, you just fall into these patterns of, you know, I'm a good kid if I do that, and it's giving you a challenge, and you either face up to the challenge or like you don't want to do that. But a lot of the time with swimmers, they do that. But it's such a singular, personal, solo sport. You are in your head for a lot of it, and it's a very, very disciplined sport. You learn a lot about like, you know, time management, working things in. There's not a lot of people, not a lot of kids that want to get up at 5 a.m. before going to school. And from that, in their 20s, it is so hard. Like, I remember being 16 and adding it up in my head and being like, it is so hard to get to the Olympics, get to the place where you want to be, where you kind of, air quotes, win. Yeah. In that sector, you're successful, because it goes down to like milliseconds. And then you've got like these crazy tall people in America and like Amsterdam, looking at you, Bart. And there's all these people that are kind of like, even if I were to be that fast or that thing, I am physically at a disadvantage or whatever. So my whole point of it is they go through their life with like the teenage years, and then they go to the Olympics or they go to the Olympic trials, whatever. And I guarantee you, every single one of my friends have gone through, at a very young age, an identity crisis of, okay, I'm not this person, so what am I then? But to get to that point of like, okay, maybe I'm not going to make it into the Olympics, they have already sacrificed like 7 or 8 years. Like, there's a lot worse things you could be doing. But my point is the fact that at a very early age, they had committed themselves to something, an identity. And it like might happen with football in school, you know, the NFL or anything like that. The whole point is that, like, you kind of have to very early on see that there's a change happening and adapt to that. But at the same time, the identity crisis is the biggest thing, because they go to college. It's around the year they all go to college, and they're not as disciplined anymore, so they can drink a bit more. And then they're not sure if they, you know, what other job they want to do, because you can't be in that mindset if you're going to win. You can't be like, no, maybe there's these other options. You have to be like tunnel vision if you're going to.
It's very black and white, isn't it? It's very results focused, not process focused. Exactly.
Yeah, there's no leeway. So it was very kind of interesting for me I see all my friends, because I knew from a very early age, I was just like, listen, I'm not going to go and win and do that. Like, I'm not going to, it's not a desire of mine to hold the Irish title or whatever. Could have been possible if you wanted to, but just not something that gave me life.
It's such a slim thing as well, because even if everything works out for you, you get the adulation and you get the prize and you can say you're the best. But then what, I suppose? And I suppose the thing I was just thinking with you, like that whole story of being a teenager, getting up, I think the only thing you really can take with, like, after the victory, say you get the victory, after the victory, the only thing you really can take with you then is the attitude that you've learned. You've learned real discipline. And then if you get a new goal, then that's probably great. My wife's a psychotherapist, and she coached a Dutch Olympian, who will obviously remain nameless, to victory after depression. And it was really interesting. It was really interesting here to talk about this. Like,
but it's a form of adaptation as well.
It's a hard. That's a hard life, and it's a strange. It's a strange win, kind of. I would imagine. Like, obviously, the win is amazing, and everyone celebrates around the world. But then I can imagine people going, oh, what then?
Yeah, and it's a funny thing with entrepreneurism and everything. It has the same element of, you got to be tunnel vision, you got to do everything, you got to be, you know, totally focused. But you see, with entrepreneurism, it's always building, it's always progressing. But with like sports and everything, there's either two outcomes: you make it or you don't. But the thing they have in common is both of those have an ending. Whereas entrepreneurism can become completely ongoing and everything. So it keeps you in the race, it keeps you going, which is reason why a lot of people get burnout, aka me. But there's like that thing is the ending is the form of change that's kind of without your, like, and that's your adaptation. That's kind of like your rewiring, you know. So there's an element of that I definitely grew up with. But I also saw a lot in my swimmer friends that were like, they're doing really good, they're doing this, and then they hit like 19, 20, and it's like their whole worlds are destroyed, you know what I mean? And whereas some of them are only beginning, for people going to college, like, you know, they've just focused on being a teenager at that point. There's nothing wrong with both upbringings. It's just the fact that I've seen that applies to the element of change and adaptation at such a young age.
Yeah.
What was the burnout for you, if I may ask?
Recently?
Oh, I don't know. You mentioned burnout.
So the entrepreneurism, burnout for me was definitely emotional burnout. So I had a business for 3 years. I had a partner with it. And it was, you know, romantically involved with the partner. Worked very well, you know, very opposites, very amicable. And just there was a few things that went a bit sideways, and then a few things with my family, and then genuinely, and I think you guys might agree with me this, when we live in a small town, and when the people came in, I would give, without even meaning to, like subconsciously, I would give everything to those customers in a way that like I made them feel seen. I'd be like, ask about how your day, you know. I really did have a beautiful.
You gave 110%. Like you were always connecting people with each other, and you know, you rang me up last minute for a few photography gigs and stuff. Like all of that it's wonderful and it's really noted.
Yeah.
But it's tiring for you.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah, and it's mad. Like I have worked in bars, like I am, and I would put in the category of not workaholic, but I would definitely be quite hard on myself in the way that I like to keep working and feel good about myself when I do good jobs. But it was surprising. Like I've worked jobs where, you know, I would go in the morning and help a mate with like, you know, whatever they're doing. I remember one of my boyfriends ran a hostel. I was like, I'll do breakfast in the morning, then I'll do surf instructing during the day for 6 hours, then I'll work in my mate's bar. And this was like during COVID times, so it was very like, oh, I'm just delighted to be doing something again. But I've done 14-hour days. I've done big days in bars and everything, and genuinely the mental exhaustion that was coming from deep down of not just only business, but like there was a lot of personal stuff happening for me there. But I think there was also the fact that, you know, there were some days where people come into the shop and I loved talking to them and everything. But I remember there was this one grey day, and we all know how dark and grey it can get in the depths of winter here and this time in the West of Clare. And it was just 4 people came in, and every day, and it turned into like more of like a therapy session for all of them, rather than like, you know, they're going to come in, buy clothes. And there was an element of like, I needed more professional. I was very emotionally tied to a lot that was going on there. And then eventually over the next 3 years, I gave parts of myself emotionally to others. And I was just tired, you know, and there was, you could feel your spark going. And I wasn't depressed, but I was definitely like, I don't feel like myself because I can't give you the smile that like I always pride myself in being happy. And it's nothing to do with like it's a fake thing. It's a genuine interest. Like I really do love. The well is
just empty, kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then with that came like I wasn't going out surfing that much. I wasn't even like, I'm a big foodie. I didn't really have an interest in eating like out in the places I wanted to. And that strains your relationship. It strains like your relationship with yourself, you know. So it did just kind of pile up, but it didn't matter because in my head it was, my main priority is to get this thing off the road and make money from it and try and build it. So Emily took beyond the backseat, which was fine, but to an element of it wasn't sustainable.
It's wild, you know. I'm really fascinated by boxers, you know, and like how they're motivated to do what they do. I remember hearing a quote about Muhammad Ali saying that he wasn't a boxing champion. He was a champion, and he chose to box. It was like whatever he did, he would have been the best in the world at it because he had that mindset. You know, another great boxing coach was just saying, all champions are insane. He's like, you cannot be world champion and have a normal mindset. You have to be a little bit crazy or a lot crazy.
I have to put something in here because I've been pestering Anthony to watch Neil Brennan's new Netflix
joking.
special. And he says in that one, he talks about the insanity of champions. And he goes, which documentary did we all watch during COVID? The Last Dance about Michael Jordan. You know, and we all found out that basketball was his hobby. Revenge was his actual goal. So that ties in so beautifully that now you have to watch
That's true. And he was a petty man.
Was.
There's a story. I presume he still is. Please don't come after me, Big Mike. But there's like stories of him like playing like poker with the security guards for like dollars, like for like $3 or $4 and cleaning them out. He just had to. But the other thing about boxers, and the thing I got really interested in is you know, because I've done a little bit myself, and it's not nice getting hit in the head. And how do you keep going, you know? And what motivates you when your body is giving out, when you're like ignoring every one of your natural signals to take care of yourself, and to when all of that's gone out the window and there's a guy beating the tar out of you, how do you stay upright? And how do you keep fighting back and possibly even win when your body's taking that much damage? And I suppose it does show the adaptability of people, that we can literally say, this guy's doing permanent damage to me. Like, that's the other thing about boxing, is as much as I love it, I can't defend it, because like people take permanent damage in the ring, and we watch
Look at
it.
Muhammad Ali.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
That was such a beautiful, eloquent man
Yeah.
who was reduced to,
But where is that coming from? And I suppose that's the dangerous part of adaptability, and that's something I always tell my patients, is that we are very resilient and adaptable creatures, and that's a bit of a curse, because you can put us in a very hostile environment, and we can make something of it. We can survive. Now, it might not be the easiest survival, and then you have to wonder, is it worth it? Is it worth what I'm giving? And I guess that's kind of the question I'm really interested in talking about, is like, how do you know when to sit with the hardship? How do you know when to resist the change and to dig your roots in? And how do you know when to bend with it?
I'm going to give the most hilarious response, considering how much of an emotionally driven person I am, and it's going to be so logical. I do a pros and cons list.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's it. That is the basic. That's actually the entrepreneurism coming out of me, which I never thought would happen. I'm such an emotionally, like, I am a live by the heart. Like, I am a love conquers all. We'll make it work. Like, it's something that I would say is my strength and my weakness, but genuinely pros and cons list.
Right.
But at the same time, I will say, here comes my heart, that some pros and some cons are heavier.
I was going to say, it's a
Then-
weighted
yeah,
pros
and
cons
you
list,
know,
yeah.
I think once you do the pros and cons list, to be honest, you're clearly at a point of bother. It's even noting that, like, I have to do this right now. But when there are, like, I've definitely done it a couple of times in my life, and, you could have 4 pros and 2 cons, and one of the big cons is just kind of like, that big con, you'll know when you do the list, that kind of like that con is enough.
Yeah.
And that's when like, that's the hardship. That's kind of it. Now, there's elements of kind of, if it's, with the businesses and everything like that, I think it's one of those things when it's just either destroying your life, like, just say you're in debt from a business, but you really believe in the product and you really wanted to push off and doing this and doing that. I think if you have tried all kind of external routes of, like, really just put yourself out there, if, again, back to your insanity quote, like, if you're just trying to push, just say you have a product, you believe in it, it's like no other in the market and everything. I do believe there's an element of, like, you will get rejection is just redirection. If you really, really believe in it and it's going to go forward, that's like your pro, and nothing will stop you then. And you will, again, adapt. You'll adapt your product, and it might just be the wrong timing, this, that, whatever. But if it's got to the point there where you kind of realize that you don't actually believe in it, you're like, oh, there's all these pros to it, it makes sense, it should be going forward, why isn't it? And there's an inner feeling of, like, because you know that the product is just not going to do it. There's like an inner feeling, I think, and I know that's so blasé and everything, but there is a gut feeling from after making the pros and cons list.
I've a question here, Emily, and it says on my notes, do you listen to your gut?
Yeah, I do. I didn't for a while. I really listen to my gut. I'm very in tune with it, but I definitely ignored it for about 2-3 years there. And I'm learning from that now. But it was genuinely a gut feel, a knowing, an inner kind of like, something is off, something's not right, something's not clicking, and then it was just kind of like, no, it's fine, you get on with the day-to-day. There's no substance to the gut feeling. There's no physical thing in front of you.
You can ignore it.
Exactly, yeah. And there was definitely moments with that. And then you just know, and there's times where I have been, halfway across the world and rang up my brother and been like, how are you? What's up? Or whatever. And he's just been like, no, I'm fine. I'm like, what's up? Something's telling me. And he's just like, all right. Granddad's in hospital. I didn't want to tell you. You're far away.
Wow.
Blah, blah, blah. And he was fine in the end. But it was just one of those weird things where it was just like, call Dylan today. My brother. Yeah, I think I definitely do listen to my gut a little bit too much as well. Though I think God, it's all about balance.
You've got that lovely paradox between a pros and cons list and the gut. And like, I might be projecting here, and you can tell me if I'm way off, Emily, but I get the impression that maybe you do pros and cons list to clarify what your gut is telling you sometimes.
That's what it sounded like.
Yeah, it's the whole, like, even then it's not about even the list, it's about just the physical process of doing it.
Going through it and putting it.
Yeah.
Okay, I in my head I'm turning into like a conspiracy theorist with the red lines
brilliant.
at the door, but it's not. It's actually, unfortunately, it's not controversial. But I was kind of in my head going, oh yeah, you have the gut, you have the adaptation, you have the Einstein quote that you don't agree with, and they're all. I'm going to try and connect them because the thing it really made me think of what you were saying in the shop with giving too much of yourself. Like, I 100% agree that it isn't. It is genuine. Yeah. You are that person. It's just, it's not endless.
Yeah.
You can't. But I had it when I talk a lot about my first job was working in a bar, and it was an amazing bar, and it taught me a lot. But the thing that I found really hard there was loneliness. I would have a lot of elderly men, mainly, who didn't have anyone else, and they would just have their specific place at the bar. I would know their names, their drinks, what they like to talk about. And that was actually great. It kind of worked. It wasn't perfect. It was alcoholism, and it was a lot of that, but they weren't alone, you know. And they actually made a lot of friends there, and it was kind of like, I was like, this is good, but I found it really wearing because I just felt the loneliness. I was like, oh no, the loneliness, I have to. And then actually I went to my Dutch Chinese medicine practitioner, and he was like, yeah, okay, you need to, that's great that you have that empathy, but this is not sustainable. So you're gonna have to go, okay, I see that, and I'm gonna leave that there. I'm just gonna do my job. I'm gonna be nice, but I'm not gonna let them all the way in the door.
The emotional detachment.
Yeah, a tiny, but not like more fine tuning the distance.
Yeah,
I was all there, and then very close to you.
Yeah.
My hand is now, and then so that was adaptation, I think, in a situation that didn't need to change, but then the gut stuff is like the big stuff where you're like, now this really has to go. And the reason that I do connect with that Einstein quote is because for me that's a very emotional quote. It's like, if you keep treating people in a certain way, you will always get the same way back. Like, I see people in my environment who are hyper frustrated at the world, and I'm like, yes, but aren't you seeing that you're constantly putting out the same signal into the world? Yeah. So I completely hear what you're saying as well, Anthony, that it's like there will always be change in the circumstance. But I think in connection, maybe it's purer. And it's like, if I always connect with you in a certain way, then, you know, you hear it a lot with men and women. You know, when men are trying to have a relationship with a woman, and they didn't, they had a particular type of relationship with the first woman they ever met, their mother. Sometimes they will kill, just to put a bit of Freud in there as well. I didn't want him to feel left out, sure.
We have been lacking a bit of Freud.
I mean, I don't even
Who
know
also
what it
is featured on, you guessed it, Neil Brennan special. He's going to watch it now. I've convinced him.
Do you want to
on
just
there.
play the special out loud?
No, it's so good. It was so good. I was so impressed by it. Also, the thing that I loved about it, and then we're going to go back to our wonderful.
Here I am underlining.
But the thing I loved about it was that he was clinically depressed for his whole life, and he did 2 specials about how depressed he was, and now he did like tons of ayahuasca, met God, and he's happy, and it's such a lovely thing to see. And now he's just like, anyone watching this who wants to be on my journey, I'm really sorry, I'm fine.
Oh my God.
Anyway, so okay, thanks, Neil. You can come on the podcast next week. I'll stop now. No, but yeah. So that's how I tied that together. But you do sound like you are actually quite gut oriented.
Yeah, I think I want to go back to the loneliness and the emotional. Can I ask you, what age were you when you worked in that bar?
Yeah, between 19 and
23,
25 or
24.
something.
Yeah, you see, that's the thing. I started Alfie's up when I was 24. You know, so not only are you just like. And I was lucky I had an older partner during it, so I really was always, and still I'm quite grateful. I always had stuff to bounce stuff off of him with, which was nice. He was a bit older. Yeah. So that was nice. And he kind of was like the calming, like before we opened up the doors and everything, there was elements where this is a great idea. And then but the week before I was like, wait, are we sure? Like, and he's my anchor there, you know, it was great. And I really do believe, I don't know if I'd be able to have started it fully without him, which was a fantastic thing to always look back on. But again, being 24, pre-frontal lobal development, 24, 25, you're just figuring yourself out. You haven't matured. You're kind of just, your focuses are kind of connecting with people. And to this day, I do think that is one of the biggest, well, for me personally, connecting with people, getting on a level with people, not just anyone, but just genuinely making, like, people, they give me energy. I really do enjoy being social. I'm definitely extroverted. I like working on myself, but there's an element of connection that I'm like, this is really quite beautiful and one of the best things in life you can ever appreciate or have. So when you are that young, working in bars, you know, doing a business and people coming in doing that, there's an element of like, you want to give everything to that connection. You want to just like help those old men and make them feel seen and do this. And then you learn a little bit that like, oh God, I'm working so much on this aspect of it. I'm kind of leaving Bart here with feelings of similarity. And what's happening with Bart? I've kind of been neglecting Bart a bit here. And it's a mad thing to kind of put yourself through. And if you're not really recognizing it, which you probably aren't because it's not something that's ever taught in school or anything, that, you know, are you checking in with Anthony? Are you checking in with Emily? How are they doing? How are they feeling about it? You know, you don't ever adapt to that change of, obviously the most inclined thing to do is to give the people what they want, which is connection, and then just give yourself over. Because it makes everybody happy. You actually get rewarded. Yeah. You get rewarded in society because a good connection is made. But then it's kind of like, so you do learn over time to be a lot more. That's why people kind of get quieter, and it's because they go more in themselves because they're just putting themselves a bit first and finding the balance of that.
Well, it's so interesting you said extroversion and adaptation, because when Jung came up with the idea of introvert and extravert, he was like, everybody's a blend of the two. Yeah. But he said it's not even worth labeling yourself. He's like, if you're doing okay, then just don't even think about it because you're doing okay. What do you need to be thinking about it for? But he said if there was maladaptation, if you're not doing okay, he's like, then you can use this as a tool. And then you can be like, the way he defined extrovert was focusing on the object, as in that which is around, and introvert as focusing on the subject, which is your inner world, you know? And it's exactly what you're saying, is that like, if you were well adapted, it wouldn't have been an issue. Yeah. But when you go out of it, you need to look at it, and like you said, you need to like look a little bit inward.
And again, that is like, in comes that gut feeling of something's off here. But at the same time, you don't know what. You don't know why. Like at the time, you're Bart, you're working in a bar, you're talking to old men. What's wrong here? You know, why do I feel this way? It's like, because there are certain tendencies, there's a certain community come in here, and also there's just this, lack of a better word, vibe. There's this depressed vibe, and you're just kind of like, wait a minute, what am I want to meet new people. You gotta meet people that ignite you and excite you, and kind of that kind of way, and you were missing that. And
you rose to meet that vibe. Like you felt that loneliness and responded to it.
Also because they didn't, like, it wasn't serving them if I was starting to feel lonely too. So
that's what they wanted. They wanted you to join the club. They were like, we're slowly breaking him down.
Yeah, but they actually really didn't, and they really wanted me they wanted to be in that space, and they wanted to be seen. They didn't need me to be lonely with them, but my kind of empathetic nature was like, we'll suffer through this together. You can't fucking do that when there's 20 people in a bar. That's ridiculous, you know. But I love the way you described that as well, about like developmentally, that you're kind of like, I so resonate with what you said there about that connection is the most beautiful thing. Of course, that is, you put that so beautifully. I haven't thought about it exactly that way.
You know,
but it's so. Yeah, see, that doesn't work for me.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, that was sorry. I was just like, no.
What were you going to say?
That was
Feel
so
the
bitchy.
joy leave Bart's face.
That was so bitchy of me. No, I'm joking.
I love bitchy Bart. Bring him out.
That's why we need to poke him, Emily.
Yeah.
No,
you haven't poked him yet. Feel free to poke him.
I'm only joking. It's more that I don't like the... because that's 100% true. Yeah. It's just that for me, the material aspect of it isn't the interesting one. Like, it's more, I really believe we nearly are that connection in a way. Yeah. You know, and I know you believe that too.
A swap of energies spiritually.
Yeah. 100%.
No, but I believe in both. I'm such a science girl.
I know,
Yeah.
But I have spirit guides.
Yeah.
You know what
I
mean?
know 100%. That's why I
I'm
felt
wearing
comfortable.
my beads, my blue lace
That's
agate
why
that I
I
got from my
felt
monk.
comfortable making that joke.
And for a long time, a lot of scientists were spiritualists as well.
Yeah,
you know, it's only recent that we've really started to split these, and I think it's totally true. Like for me, the dopamine label doesn't do much for me to reduce it to a hormonal exchange or a hormone and trigger, but it's also true. And
It also
like you
gives an
can
avenue for scientists to go down that route
Yeah,
into
and it
like
is the
emotions.
interface,
You know?
and it is the bodily interface that we're working with works in that way.
Yeah.
My sister sent me this meme yesterday where you see like I don't know, it's like some kind of I think it's from X-Men or some kind of cartoon, and you see like two characters shift in the head of each other, and it says like spirituality, science, and then you see Wolverine at the front looking really depressed, and it says religion. You know, he stepped out.
As an absolute massive sci-fi nerd, I love this. I cried watching Logan twice.
Yeah. Oh,
I actually haven't dared watching it because I know I'd just be like,
Oh, that Professor X scene. Anyway, can I get a little bit sciencey for a moment? Just because we're tipping down there. But
we've started.
we opened that, and I'm also worried that we'll start talking about sci-fi, and the pod will be 3 hours long. But
Oh my god, are you guys sci-fi guys?
yeah,
Okay,
we're
leaving it there.
There's a fair chunk of verse that I'll go in on those
that'll be the
shelves
second
behind you.
episode.
People are always so surprised when I'm a sci-fi girl. I grew up on Marvel. Anyway,
Did you?
let's
Very
move on, guys, before this keeps going.
But in terms of adaptation, you know, in herbal medicine, in Chinese herbal medicine, they we use like thousands of different herbs. My dispensary upstairs has about 140 in it, but like a big dispensary will have 600, a hospital will have 800. There's about 3,000 in the Taiwan National Pharmacopoeia. So there's a lot of different herbs. So because there's so many, they've tried to farm them in greenhouses to make the production more sustainable. And what they find is that when you do that, they lose a lot of their medical efficacy, because a lot of what the beneficial parts of herbal medicines are what we call secondary metabolites. They are things that do not occur naturally. They need to be triggered by stress or predation. So if a plant is growing in soil that has a high salt content, or if there's a cold snap, or if there's a type of parasite that feeds on it, it might produce an extra amount of flavonoids to make itself more bitter so that the parasite won't eat it. And these flavonoids are really strongly anti-inflammatory, and then that's where the medical benefits come from. So that's why you hear about things like wild ginseng being so prized. It's not a marketing thing. Like, it's almost a different plant. Farmed ginseng and wild ginseng, Renshen, are completely different. And I find that really interesting that, you know, that's what I was thinking about you when you were surrounded by all this loneliness, is that your environment formed you into a tool and gave you the skills you needed to deal with it. Like you said, you could be there for these men. You were the ginseng.
Ginseng? Did you say the wild one?
Well, Renshen is the Chinese, just wild ginseng, yeah. So, but
My new nickname, Emily. Don't forget it.
You know,
I won't.
Wild
Shouted
ginseng.
it at the age.
Ginseng.
If you ever start doing like country and western covers, we'll call you wild ginseng.
Oh my god, no.
Wild Jim Sing.
That is
Oh,
literally,
it's done.
that is your like,
I'm imploding.
yeah, that is. Anyways, I completely love that because I have always, growing up, I've always had this huge tie to what you put in your body is really important, but not to the point of, I have always, and I don't know why, this has always been like an inner hatred of me. There's no reason for it. There's no bad experience. There's no, but like anything that isn't natural. Again, I'm a science girl. So like, I understand there's a certain element of chemical equations need to happen. I'm not talking about like the raw and real and this diet, whatever. I'm talking about like these Weight Watchers stuff, or like Coke versus Diet Coke. You know, I'm like, I would argue, and like, I'm not going to, but I would argue like Diet Coke is way worse than Coke, just because of the chemicals that are going into it and everything. I've always really not loved anything super processed. Yeah. So much so that I tried all these different diets growing up, and just to see what it would happen in my body. So I did like the paleo diet, I did the sugar-free diet, I did gluten-free, I did veganism. I tried veganism when I went to Africa, and I was doing stuff there with I was doing like surf life saving, kind of teaching the basis of water sports and the importance of lifeguarding. to the Navy and the Army and like some qualifications there.
You drop these little things.
Yeah. But see, things I didn't
Yeah.
live there. It wasn't on vacation. So it's kind of like these small things of like, genuinely, I've gone through so much change, you know, in life. But when I went and I tried veganism, I came back seeing a boyfriend, went to his house for Christmas loads, was not going to be that person. I was like, oh, I can't have that, I'm vegan. Because I was only vegan for like 6 weeks at that point. And my mental fog was like insane that Christmas. And I was like, what the hell? And it went on for 2 or 3 weeks. And then I said, what's changed? Like, what's going on? So I went back and I tried veganism and it went away again. And then for the next 5 years, I was vegan. You know what I mean? And then I wanted to be a vegan coach. And then I went down that avenue. And then I realized everybody's gut microbiomes are in a state. Mine was just okay. And then I decided to do a gut course. And then I decided I might go back into nutrition. And then I decided, you know what? No, I don't want to tell everybody how they're going to eat for the rest of their lives. But I also wrote a cookbook. And there was all these things. But it was like the main thing about it was that even in veganism, I didn't like having the meat substitutes. I didn't like having, you know, and there's a huge thing to be said for, again, a little bit of like, a bit of bad is good for you. And just, it's so bizarre because with not only just like the science of the Chinese herbal medicines of the bad being good, and as a result you become a better herb in a way. It's also just kind of like the spiritual like swap over of energies in a way that it's like when you're made in this beautiful lab, completely contained, and nothing will get to you, and you know, you give what you want, you do that, you produce this, and you kind of come out this way. There's like you're less of the wild herb, and it's just like when it's out in organic soil, or this is happening, and like things pass through, not only just a bad thing, but actually just being exposed to like just like different environments that way, it makes you stronger. Like
100%. A therapist friend of mine once had a girl come in who was like, I think she was 25 or something. So like you said, it is that kind of age. And he was just like, what's going on? She had a lovely upbringing. Everything was great. Attachment, great, everything. And then after like half an hour, he was like, oh, nothing happened to her. And her parents took care of everything as well. And she was just like, there was no resilience. It was so funny to hear him talk about it because he's like a really sharp therapist. And he was just like, yeah, there had to be a lot of growing done. There wasn't anything. Most people come in and it's like, oh yeah, that went wrong. Oh geez, that's fucked up. Oh, okay, let's look at that. That tire has a puncture or whatever. Yeah. And he was like, everything went fine, but it was like you said, it was kind of like a greenhouse circumstance.
Yeah, and like when you grow up with that, you kind of like it's the maddest thing because, you know, if you don't reflect ever or kind of take note, it's so bizarre. I really feel strongly about this because I do think, like, you know, exposure to something and more experience with it, you get more used to it, so you're more inclined for it and everything. And so, like, I'm very good at confrontation, meaning I've had a lot of fights growing up. A lot of people are fight or flight. I'm fight. I'll fight and I'll work through it. When I was young and I was a kid and I was fighting with my parents or doing whatever, my life was falling apart. Now when I fight and everything like that with people, and I wouldn't even say a fight now, I like would argue. Now I'm just kind of like, okay, well, like this fight doesn't mean anything because my life went on then and my life will go on now. But it's so bizarre that like when you kind of grow up with nothing kind of bad happening in that way, and she has no resilience, there's this mindset of like, what did I do wrong? You know, again, quite internal. And really, in the end of the day, it's kind of like sometimes you didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes that's just the way it goes. And sometimes just gotta like accept that, like, okay, this thing went wrong. Maybe you had a part to play in it. Okay, accept that, move on. And maybe don't do it again and learn from it. Or, you know, sometimes it was out of your like, let it go. You know, like it's so internalized of like, you focus so much more on yourself when everything else around you is like prim and perfect and everything, because you can't focus on anything else. But like when loads of things are going out of your control and a bit like here, there and everywhere, and things are going wrong, you do kind of focus on yourself in a way, but you do it in a way that kind of like, well, stuff is going to come at me whether I like it or not, and I'll be able to face it, you know. And it's just that mindset of like, I don't want to say victimization, but like there's an element of like there's something wrong with me. It's just kind of like there's something wrong with all of us.
Well,
but we're all like, it's like this weird allowing.
Well, yeah, if we can do a bit more, delve another toe into sci-fi. Like, I love that Captain Picard quote.
Yes, please.
Where it's like, it's possible to make all the right decisions and still lose. Yeah. That's not failure, that's life.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think I just, like, I was a bit of a, for lack of a better term, brat growing up, you know? And
it's a completely acceptable archetype.
If I could find an easier way to do something, we all have one or two or three. Yeah, I was so beyond still am so stubborn, and it was like I wanted to do what I wanted to do, no matter what. No one's going to stop me, and it was a bit in a way like selfish, given certain terms. And God love my brother is older, but like he is. I think because I was running around the place as a kid, just like doing whatever I want. He preempted, because he was always with me. He preempted lots of things happening. He was like, okay, what's the worst thing? Because he became like my protector in a way, where I was like, stomp, 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 here I come, everybody be ready. And Dylan, my brother, was like, oh God, here she comes. Oh God, she's going to trip there. Okay. And that, as a result now, like we go out for a drink and he goes, Emily, give me your bag. This, I'm like, okay, doing this, doing that. And it's like, he has now developed into the most suitable father figure you have ever seen in your entire life. But he also, in a way, mindset, he goes to the worst thing happening before the best thing happening. And we talk about this a lot in a way that it's kind of like, I think it's my fault. And I'm like, but he recognized it now. And now it's a way of kind of like when you recognize it and kind of figure it out, you can kind of see it clearly for what it is. And, you know, just kind of preempt that and kind of work further on like dealing with that. But it's just mad. Like one of my favorite quotes recently that I'm delving into, because I agree with a part of it and I don't agree with a part of it. It's like the worst place you can be is in the same place you were last year. And for someone like me who struggles with consistency, like I do, like whether I like it or not, I just do. I think it would be lovely to work on something so much so that you are kind of in the same place, but physically, you know what I mean? Mentally and emotionally, no, you should not be in the same place. You should always be learning, always reflecting, always kind of taking note. And it doesn't, like, you could be in a bad place as opposed to the year before you were in a good place. You're like, God, I wish I was there. It's kind of like, no, just keep going forward, but also knowing that the end is near and that like nothing bad ever lasts forever unless you decide it does.
I think it's there were so many things you said there, and I'm sure Anthony's book is now full already as well. But that's such an interesting one about not being in the same place, but being in the same place physically, because I think that's something a lot of people around here share, is that actually everyone is really on the move in developmentally, but are all happy that the physical movement has stopped. Like, we're all kind of like, oh yeah, this is the spot where we can... It's funny how that's a real common denominator. And then the other thing I was going to say is, as two older brothers who have definitely taken on the protector archetype, so much so that it's getting us into heaps of trouble. And it's one of the things I recognize most strongly in Anthony.
Yeah. If we're both looking daggers at you, Emily,
we could do you could do a whole therapy session with us where you could
archetype
play
meet archetype.
I knew this was going to be good.
Yeah. I would want to say actually though that it isn't that sounds so horrible, but it isn't your fault.
Oh no!
I disagree. I think it is.
You're a brat enough that you wouldn't have thought it was your fault. But I mean, it is always the responsibility of the person taking on that role.
It's a dynamic. Totally. It's a dance between two people.
It's a caring love. Exactly. You're just doing your best.
I just wanted to say that in case my sister is listening, which she probably is. Yeah. It was my fault. No, but I mean, it's your own responsibility how you respond to the circumstances.
Yeah, totally.
I find that quote fascinating as well, Emily, and I am somebody who moved around an awful lot too. And I remember talking to somebody once and just talking about herbal medicine and saying I'm really interested in Indigenous Irish herbal medicine, and an awful lot has been lost, over the last couple of 100 years. And I'd love to bring some of the attributes of the way Chinese herbal medicine categorizes herbs, and start to bring it to Irish herbal medicine so that we can maybe start substituting in a few local Indigenous herbs and so on. But it's a huge job. It's a very, very difficult job. And it just seemed overwhelming. I was like, I don't even know how I start. The person I was talking to was just like, oh yeah, that's legacy work. And I was like, what's legacy work? And they were like, you just start that. You don't finish it. Like, you just start. That's bigger than a lifetime.
Yeah.
And I was like, geez, I'd never.
Wow.
I was so ego focused. I was so self-driven and being like, I need to start a project and finish a project and deliver a project, that the concept of something being bigger than a single person or bigger than a single lifetime kind of blew my mind, you know? And then there was, and my second point is we had John Lillis on the podcast, and John has written a book called The Beach Report. Have you come across it, Emily?
Yeah, we sold it in Alfie's, and
There
I
you
sold it
go.
at a festival for him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
So, you know, John went and swam in the sea every week for 2 years and wrote about it. And he did the same thing over and over and over and over. And there's that Steve Reich quote where it's like, if you think, you know, he's a composer, and he was like, if you think something's boring for 4 bars, play it for 8. And if it's still boring, play it for 16 and 32 and 64. And then he's like, eventually you'll realize there's no such thing as boring, you know?
Wow.
I love that part about legacy work as well, because I know that's a bit of a cliche, that quote, but I think it's true. Like, a society grows great when young men plant trees in whose shade they will never sit, is it? Or old
Yeah.
men plant trees, maybe?
Yes.
But it's regardless. They're
Old
planting
man
the
plant
trees.
trees.
They're
Any
planting
man
the
can
trees.
plant a tree, Bart.
Or women, or anyone.
Oh,
no,
yeah,
but,
okay, sorry. Yes, of course.
No, but I mean, it is kind of a big gift to be given to your environment if you are like, yeah, I'm going to start something that I'm not going to see the fruits of. But then obviously your reward will be a meaningful life.
And can I ask, very interesting now, when you heard the legacy thing, and I was really interested when you said, you know, my ego really just made me feel like I was going to finish it, and you attached kind of like the identification through that onto you. Can I ask, when he said that's legacy work and you had that realization, did you go, there's 2 ways you can go, did you lose some interest in it, or did you gain more interest in it? Because that's very tied to the ego.
It is. I suppose it depends on where your motivating fire is coming from. First of all, it was a woman that said it to me. And secondly, I felt relief, honestly.
Yeah,
And I've started to
pressure's off.
realize that I met somebody over in Taiwan, a bit of a master in his particular discipline. And he gave me a bit of a life. Okay, so he was a Taiwanese astrologer, right? So, and he sat down with us for a long time, and he sat down with Katie for a particularly long time, because she's, you know, an astrologer
astrology.
herself, you
Yeah.
know. But then, like, he had a few minutes at the end to look at my chart, and his assistant passed my chart over to him, and for the first time, he saw my chart, and he just like looked at it. He's like, "Buyaozuo Lawan," and he was just like, "Don't be a boss." It was like he looked at my chart, and the first thing he said was, "Don't be a boss." And I just went, "Oh, thank God!" And like it was such a relief for me, because I think I probably have a tendency towards legacy work, but the thing that I actually find an impediment to it is having to deliver something, because we live in a capitalist society. We are encouraged to be productive.
Yeah.
You know, you have to produce something, and that thing has to have commercial value, and then you need to distribute it. And being reminded that there are different systems of value. Yeah. So I would say in that moment, my conceptualization of the project was destroyed, as in it no longer became...
Your be all and end all.
Yeah, and it no longer became something I was going to throw myself into for 20 or 30 hours a week. But it became something more sustainable, and probably maybe something I can work on for longer down the line.
Interesting, yeah, because that is something for me that, like, with starting up Alfie's, I remember it was my 25th birthday, and it was one of my, there's three main birthdays that have stuck out for me, and my 21st one, or my 20th, I think it was my 20th. Yeah, it was my 20th birthday. I had immigrated to Australia. I'd been there like half a year at that point or something along. Anyway, I'd gone to Africa, I'd gone to America, I'd gone to Australia. I got a college degree. I kind of cheated the system in 1 year. And I was like, cool. I feel really accomplished. I'm doing the things that, like, I say I'm going to do. And it wasn't even an accomplished feeling. It was just a feeling of like, yeah, you're doing the things. You don't really know what you're doing. You're working 2 jobs, one in a call center, one in a hippie store that does Indian produce and weed incense, which I loved. The store, not the weed incense. You know, I was...
The Dutchman just raised an eyebrow.
bit of both.
But it was, and then the other birthday was, 25, it was 4 months after we'd opened Alfie's, and it was that exact same feeling of kind of like, okay, cool, you're doing something that you said you'd do. Neither one was, oh God, I wish I was back here at 21 doing that or this, that. None of them were that. It was literally just the whole fact of, okay, I'm actually going out and I have these feelings of the things I want to do and I'm going and doing them. It's not in the way I thought I'd do them. It's not in the fashion. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not emotionally safe or sound in any way that I haven't, I'm not there. I'm not my best self in doing these things, but I'm doing them. And that kind of looking back at that moment was just kind of like, okay, cool. That's really good. But for the sustainable, when we opened Alfie's, there was this legacy work relationship with it that ignited my soul so much in the way that, we're not just opening a store, we're opening one that's trying to make fashion and trends as sustainable as possible. So we're giving you vintage, we're giving secondhand luxury stuff. We're also using a way to figure out how to do things with dead stock. So like when the stores have overfill and we buy it off them and we sell that on, and then there's kind of like, handmade stuff by local people and everything. And I was like, okay, people, when they buy something in my store as opposed to Zara or something like that's a small change. And I remember I used to sell stuff on the stories on Instagram and everything. And by the way, and if anyone wants to go into Alfie's and it's diamond, it's doing really well.
Shop.
Like it's still open. Like
Brilliant.
Ina's doing a great job. So do go in. It's a beautiful building. And I looked back at all the clothes we'd sold, and it was one of those moments where it was like, God, like we've sold hundreds and hundreds of clothes, and I was so proud of the fact that like every single one of those purchases was a step in the right direction towards sustainable fashion. And not only that, it was also the thing, like sometimes I'd have a bit of a crossroads with selling dead stock because it was brands like Zara and doing this. And I was like, am I just allowing these mass corporations to sell and overproduce? Because I'm dealing with their waste. If so, like we didn't do a lot of dead stock, but like I had a thought process about that. And then I said, no, because right now where we are, people do like the Zara. And when they know where it comes from and I explain it, it's a step into that. Like the people who are coming in for the dead stock Zara stuff or the dead stock whatever are not the people who are that big into vintage or this. But it's on offer in that store. So as a result, they're getting introduced and exposed to this new environment of kind of like, oh, that's different. Oh, that's cool. I never thought about that. And I had a lot of people that come in like, I don't really understand vintage. Like, what is it? Doing this, doing that. And then I would go down and I'd be like, the quality is amazing. It's generally half the price. It's going to last you. It's generally all this kind of stuff. So that legacy work, even though it was funny how, because I did modeling and acting and, the whole like beauty thing you're talking about, you can tie yourself to ego in that, but the legacy work just ignited my soul so much more, and still does, for the fact that I still want to do something in sustainable fashion in the next year and start up a business in it, because it's never ending, but it's also progressive. I wouldn't be able to have a store and be like, hey,
Yes.
this is really pretty, you should wear it, buy it. In my head, like I would never buy that. I'd be like, no, like give me a few reasons. Like it's just, but at the helping the environment, it's gonna last you better quality. Like all these things, this work of like, if it were easy, everyone would do it. The tailoring of vintage, all that kind of stuff. It's hard to sell each item bit by bit. It's easier to just be like, everybody wants this. I'm gonna cut it to size. I'm gonna bump up the price market and everything. But yeah, the legacy work really hit a note there, which is really interesting because it is mostly about ego, isn't it? In your approach towards it, and kind of like, ooh, I can't finish this work, I'm not going to be one credit for it, so why would I do it?
Well, it's like
But
Muhammad
then it's
Ali,
also,
like he gave himself the nickname the greatest, and his first
you
couple
really
of,
love Muhammad Ali, don't you?
I think I think boxers in general are extraordinary, but like
Yeah.
his first few fights, he drew a crowd because people wanted to see him lose. So I think it is about the ego. I think that maybe if you are going for external measures of success, finance, a gold medal, you need ego.
How do you feel about Muhammad Ali's ego?
You see, as great as he was as a boxer, he was much bigger than that. Like what he did for the civil rights movement in the States is much bigger than anything he did in boxing. So I think that's...
Boxing was just an avenue to get him there.
Yeah. I think we're all tools. Honestly, I think like the same way you can look out that window and see, 250 different plants. Each one of those has adapted to their environment in a different way.
100%.
you know, and that's when we use herbal medicine, that's what we're doing. We are taking on the energetic of organisms that have successfully adapted to their environment, and we're taking a little bit of that into ourselves. We're borrowing a bit of that. Not every herb is good for everyone, but even the most toxic herbs have an application.
Yeah.
So,
And I like that. That ties in with what I was going to say, is that what I like about your attitude there with the Zara deadstock is a new word that I didn't know yet.
Ooh, we're learning.
We are learning. But what I like about that attitude is it's dealing with the world as it is, kind of. Because what I notice a lot with sustainability these days is that people will have some stock ideas about flying, eating meat, whatever, that are just not researched and are kind of just like, this is one of the things that is good, and then that they go, okay, I'll do that, and then don't think about anything else. You know, it's like going, oh, petrol cars are bad, I'll get an electric car, not thinking about what it took to build that electric car and the slave mining that is feeding into it, you know. And I'm not saying, oh, they're all bad, that's not what I'm saying, but it's like
shades of grey.
It's all shades of grey. So when people get on their high horse and go, we're only doing it this way, then again, to contradict myself, if you wouldn't be comfortable with that, that is also a thing. Like, there is things like I do, my main gigs are music and translation. And sometimes I get texts where I'm like, yeah, my words are not going to be used for this. I hate this shit. And then I don't do it, you know. So, but I like the fact that you had that Zara deadstock and you kind of went, okay, how do I feel about this? Yeah, okay, I can do something with this. That's cool. You know?
They reflect.
Yeah. And that's the same with the veganism. Like, when people say they're vegan, I can sometimes go, oh, there we go, I'm going to get a lecture, you know, and you're not like that at all.
No.
And then I said this to Anthony yesterday when we met with you briefly to organize this podcast. I was like, oh, someone like that can talk to me about anything because it's not dogmatic. And that's a big one for me.
That stuck with me for the whole day, actually. You can cut this out if you want, but like, genuinely, this is my like heart. I was like, God, like, you guys picked me to do this because you thought, like, you know, I that like we can have a good chat and we can have our good points and argue it like very maturely. But mostly, I'm such a rambler, and I'm also like, I'm not well vocabbed. We'll listen back and be like, that sentence didn't make sense. But you guys know what I'm talking about.
I disagree, but okay.
Thank you, I appreciate that. No, but I am like spelling is atrocious. But it really stuck with me the whole day that it was just it. And maybe it's my ego or something, but the whole day I was just kind of like that. You viewed me in a way that was not only just two-sided, but kind of like you valued my opinion enough that it would be kind of like we could talk about it. And that made my entire day. Like, I was just, nothing could get me down that day. And I had a hard day yesterday. But like, I was genuinely, like, I was thinking about it when I was going to bed. I was thinking about it when I was eating dinner. I was like, oh, that's actually like, that is such... It's like one of the few things in life where you're kind of like, wow, like I'm doing it. I'm being a good, top of the notch, authentic, real person.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
And
it's kind of nice.
Genuine connection.
Yeah, genuinely. You know, and you can get wrapped up in all these things. Like, it's so funny.
Hey, can I ask you something that occurred to me earlier, and I think
Please.
that ties in. And thank you for saying that. I think that's
and thank you for coming on. Like, you're the one providing value here, not us.
No.
It's
a three-way.
But I was wondering, you were talking about followers, and I don't know what my question is.
Okay.
But followers is such an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Like, so the only stuff I put on social
Instagram
media, so the only stuff I put on social media is music stuff. And geez, I'm delighted if there's heaps of followers because it might mean I get more opportunities in terms of music.
Yep.
But when you were talking about the followers there, it sounded like you wanted them, and correct me if this is wrong, like if you wanted them to know the real you, kind of genuinely. Is that right?
That is actually the exact approach that I take with it. So I've always had a fascination with not social media, not just Instagram, like YouTube. Like, one of the biggest and my most inspiring people I've ever not met, but like appreciated, was Casey Neistat. I don't know if you know him, but he's like an entrepreneur from New York.
Heard the name,
one of the first huge YouTubers.
Yeah, he was really big, but he was an entrepreneur. But he was raw, he was real, he was like live, and he was just he had no level of ego, And I learned so much from him, and I learned like loads. Anyways, my whole point was, you know, this was during the highlight reel of social media, where it was kind of Kim Kardashian. It was kind of like, let's show you a life of luxury. Everybody wants it. Everyone desires it. And then Casey comes in and he's just like, this is my life. It's hard work and I love it. You know what I mean? And this is it. Nothing's perfect. And this. And he went on a very kind of different route, in a way that he didn't show the perfect. He showed everything that's going wrong and brought you along with the journey. And no matter what you did, as long as Casey's being Casey, you weren't going to, you learn stuff when you watch it, you get taken other places. But the main thing about it was Casey showed up as Casey being Casey. And no matter what you did for his videos or anything, you wanted to see more and learn from him, because he had a rough life, but he stood up to all the challenges that ever happened, and you were just kind of learning from him. And he wasn't doing it in a way that like, hey, I know it all. It was just kind of like, hey, I'm trying to figure it out. I'll take you along with me. And there was a connection there that, like, to this day, it's so funny, because I never want to meet him. I want to work with him. It's one of those things of, it's like, don't meet your heroes. I don't want to meet him. I don't bow down. I'm like, I like who you are, and I want to work on something with you. And that would be one of my greatest prized possessions. But anyway, so this is when I'm really young.
Casey, if you're listening.
Yeah. Can you imagine? But I want to drink wine with your wife, because she looks like fun time.
That's a weird compliment to give someone.
No, she's cool. Yeah, she's cool. But no, the whole thing is that with social media and Instagram, I think it's a complete window to the world. Like, and I was there I really liked Instagram, because I always loved photography growing up, and I loved that whole app, and then the development of it. So I've done videography and photography for a lot of influencers, and I've seen the background of it, and I've seen lots of things, and you can take different routes with it. So you can take the professional portfolio route, where it is like, people look up Instagrams of restaurants before they read the reviews now. And that's just plain and simple what it is. You know, people, someone said that, you know, Instagram stories are the new newspaper. You used to roll over and look at the newspaper. Now you just look at the Instagram stories and you get the headlines. You get everything there. So it's a brilliant, brilliant app in a way that has taken the best bits from everything and put it into one. And it's still going, because it was just a photo app. But now it's completely owned by businesses. And my whole point of it was that I believe it's a window to the world. I believe that I know I will own a business or multiple or whatever, that if I'm not up to date with this app and doing it in a part of it, that I am a few steps behind and I'm losing out. And I would be okay with that. Like, I would genuinely throw my phone away in the morning if I could. Like, that is the thing about it. Like, I'm so active on it and everything, but I know why I'm doing it. And it's not a fake thing, because I could go in the approach of like, this is my professional life, this, but that's not how I am in life. I give myself to my customers, like you guys. I am nothing without that emotional connection, and I get energy out of that. I get that connection. So when I'm raw and real, and it's only been in recent months since like I kind of left the business, I'm like, okay, back to my personal Instagram. I used to do it a bit more, and I like, you know, the Q&A thing I find is the least trendiest thing to do, and I give these big rambly answers, and but there's always like, it's so funny. It starts with like a couple of thousand at the first, and by the end it's like probably down to least of 1,000 people. But those least of 1,000 people talk to me, and they're like, oh, I loved your answer on this, or like, oh, I related on this, and that, like, I'm like, yes, okay, because I say the most outrageous things on it, and I'm raw and I'm real and I'm really like kind of honest with it. But the followers is more so my community. And it's like anything I do in life, I'm going to make a community out of it. I'm going to get to know my people. And I know, and it's not, I'm not doing this because like, oh, I want all these people to just invest in me. It's just my attitude of it. You can go, this is my personal page. I'm very personal on it, and only my slight friend group can do it. This is my professional portfolio, and this is my work, and this is all you see. This is my business. You don't ever see my face. You don't even know who I am, but this is what I have to offer, which is totally, all of these avenues are totally fine. And then this is me, you know, and the thing is that like, I don't really like, I'm at the moment, I'm surf instructing, I'm lifeguarding, I'm modeling and acting. I might be going to Kerry for a movie this Thursday actually, which is cool. You guys might know. Anyways.
I think
I think
a buddy of mine just got a job on a a sound guy shooting a movie in We'll swap
Is
names
it, I think
afterwards.
it's the Celtic. Yeah, anyway, so we'll resonate.
And by the way, it's great every time I open up YouTube and I see your face on the ads as well. You know.
Oh
have
my
you
God.
caught that yet?
No.
Oh
Emily's,
yeah,
Emily's.
I was in a mobile network ad, and I'm getting photos. What shows? Anyways, like I know I have a surfboard in it, but it's my face is.
Yeah, there's that rapid fire, all the faces at the end.
But
and
do
your
you even
faces.
see? Because people are messaging me about it. It is like a split second, and people are like, "Oh, I saw you," and I'm like, "That is how I didn't see that. I
Well,
watched the
we're
ad."
looking out for you. You can see it's you with the surfboard.
One of my
the
mates
wetsuit
from
and,
London was like, "I saw you on the big screen in the cinema," and I
All
was
the
like,
older brothers are looking out for you.
yeah. But anyway, so the followers thing,
Yeah.
when I say followers, I don't mean like they're following me. I think it's more so kind of like we're all guiding each other. Like I have friends that I met and stayed in touch with on Instagram for the last 8 to 10 years, you know, and it's just kind of like there's an element of checking in on the life, but it's also like, you know, I think I make a big effort with it, but I make a big effort to connect and be vulnerable and also be honest in a way that I don't have to be, and sometimes it's exhausting, and sometimes it is a bit like, Emily, you're in a bikini in the photo talking about this, like we know what you're doing here. But at the same time, it's just like there's elements to like, well, I do love the beach life. I'm not going to give up the beach life anytime soon, and you know, I do want to do something with sustainability, and I do want to talk about this. But I think there's a good mix of like professional, like I'm trying to do like sustainable hair products. And then also like I try to incorporate my own personality with it, like so like foodie stuff. I'm eating good raw real food, like I said, has always been really important to me. Even yesterday I posted the photo about Hugo's, who I love. He's a good mate of mine, does the most amazing bread. And then I put it up there, and then I had like the Shines tuna thing. And then the owner of the company like started following me, gave me a 25% discount off things, and that helps her business, which is like a small business in Ireland, doing that. And it's just this constant like flow of like community and honest and raw real,
really
but making
is
a conscious.
community,
It is for me. It is anyways. And there's an element of kind of like, what the hell is putting a photo of you with your makeup and your hair done doing for that? And I'm kind of like, well, whether we like it or not, guys, there's an element of like beauty like statistically, when you're scrolling on down your thing, if you have your scrolling, statistically we actually will stop for, I think it's not even a full second, but we will pause a little bit if 70% of it is skin. Just as humans, we will actually pause, and it doesn't matter if it's a body, a face, whatever. So that's why it's like selfies. And I think that's a nicer way to put it rather than like whole body shots of like, you know, there's an element of this where you kind of work with the algorithm and our physical makeup.
You really see it on there. Because I'm still fairly new to Instagram, and I really realized like, oh yeah, there's a specific way to draw people in. And I think like being honest about that, like another thing, I like that. That's honest. You know, it's not like, oh, why would anyone click on me for, you're all here for my ideas. It's like, well, it's a photo app, so the first interaction is not that. But I wanted to ask, because that was a beautiful answer about community and stuff. I wanted to know how does it compare with the exhaustion that you felt in the shop?
Good question.
As in kind of keeping up to date with Instagram and this? Or
that? Just like when you're doing a Q&A, for instance, and there's literally 1,000 people on it.
Similar, very similar. Yeah, I think there's an element to burnout, and that's why, again, learning from the burnout in the shop, I would try to do a Q&A every week, just to keep like a lid on it. But again, life gets busy. I don't hold a lot of value on it and everything. And then sometimes, you know, when someone posts too much about Q&As, you kind of like, oh, I've seen this before. So adding in that like element of desirability, keeping it alive there. So don't do too much. But again, that's fun.
But that's functional. But for yourself,
I definitely would. Oh, social media is it's a burnout. No matter what you do, like it is never. And my acceptance of it'll always be there. Like I do help businesses with social media. And my biggest and best advice, and the first thing I always start with is, this is a never-ending job. It's not a legacy job, because there's no good coming from this. Like, other than raising awareness other than the fact of your business is getting things. Do you know what I mean? Like but it is a never-ending job. So accept that it will never get done.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest thing, because when you're an entrepreneur, when you're doing this, or own a business, or you're doing whatever, it's kind of like, I want to get this done. It's kind of like, you need to accept right here, right now, this is never going to finish. And you need to just accept, so having a schedule, having little bits that you feel comfortable about, and do not do what everyone else is doing, because you will not feel comfortable and do it. Then if you want to branch out and do videos and do this, fine. But in all honesty, if that's not something you're going to find comfortable, you're never just going to be like, oh my God, I feel really comfortable all of a sudden doing it, unless you're very adaptable. We don't know. But like, You can gauge when people kind of like, you know, if you don't want to do a sitting down talking video, do a voiceover. You know what I mean? There's so many ways around it to find something that works for you, that connects. Because in the end of the day, especially in our generation, all we are striving for is connection. Because everyone else wants to be seen, he wants to be heard, you know. And it's back in the day, like our grandmothers and our grandfathers, they would go to each other's like houses for tea and do this and do that. But now we're in this world where it's kind of like, you got to be hustling, you got to be the best you can be, what is this? So going over and spending an hour or two at someone's house just to catch up when you're in your 40s and have kids at home is just totally not the norm now. So you lack that connection. And in a way, you're looking through it for other avenues. So, you know, this is why you have influencers. This is why you have like relatability here. I just think we're also wrapped up in our own worlds that we forget this kind of basic want for connection and community. And also the fact that, you know, living in big cities, I've done it. You know, I've lived in England and France and Australia and Indonesia. And like, I've lived in these places where it can feel so lonely. And you're just surrounded by so many people. And it's mostly because you're in that mentality of like rat race, of like bettering me, of kind of like my time needs to be for this. Whereas back here, I'm doing a cook up and I could be like, hey, Emer, do you want some food? She'd come over. She'd be like, bring another friend.
It's the best.
It's the best. Hugo last night, it was like, does anybody want some bread? Some got left over from the bakery. I went around to all the local businesses and was like, here, Paddy, have a loaf of bread. I froze loads. I got some for my friend. And that incorporated this thing of like, you're constantly like a part of something else, your connection, you do like.
Oh, but this is something that we both, Anthony and I, feel very strongly about as well. Jesus, fall hard and get onto us. But it's like,
I actually did something for them.
Of course you did.
Just there.
But I think, I love that here. I love that connection and people actually, and having the real world connection.
Yeah.
But I see that part as well about having the online one. Like there's, especially for me, for some reason, it's comedians. I think probably because their opinions are a bit freer and it's a bit more goofy sometimes.
Yeah.
But there will be certain people on certain podcasts or something, and I'll be like, oh, delighted. That's made my work day behind the laptop much more social. But I'm very aware that it still won't give me the same as the actual real life. But it is, you do get something from it.
Yeah.
Like, you do get something from it.
Can I point out something I find a bit interesting, Emily? Because I worked on cruise ships and I've done a fair bit of traveling, and there is a certain archetype of person that just travels. And I don't think you necessarily meet that archetype. I find that there's a lot of people, like I have a friend who's visited 190 countries, you know, but like you're just skimming off the surface there. You seem to have an ability to connect with place and community, which is stronger than a lot of these people that would just go in and take the selfie and then move on, you know. And there's a Chinese medicine theory behind this. So we've got the theory of the 5 elements. If you imagine an organism as being a tree, right? Your kidneys, your water element are the roots, the liver, the wood element is the trunk, the heart or the lungs are the metal element or the branches, and the heart is the leaves absorbing the sunlight. And the 5th element is the soil that tree is planted in.
The roots.
And I find that, well, not the roots. The roots are the...
Oh, so it's the actual soil.
It's the soil. So it's like, that's
sturdy.
the earth element, and that's the digestion. I find that really interesting that, like, there's this acknowledgement that there's an aspect of our health and ourselves that lives outside of us as an organism. Wow. Like, that connection with the environment is integral in Chinese thought. And you have a really strong digestion, which I think is really interesting. You have a really strong earth element. So you have this connection with the soil that you're planted in, wherever that is, which is quite nice. But the other thing is, because you're so adaptable, maybe you've ended up in a few soils and environments that are a little bit difficult. Whereas if somebody has a very weak earth element and they're put somewhere where they're not getting the nourishment they need, they just bail, you know? So this is what I mean about resilience can sometimes be like a little bit of a curse, because we can knuckle down and we can get through. But sometimes being a little less resilient makes us listen up a little bit faster.
I take my hat off. My head's getting big over here. That was a beautiful analogy. And do you know what I love most about it is I really wouldn't have put the leaves as the heart. because you think it's in your core, it's in this, but that is just, yeah. So that was really beautiful. I think, you see, the thing about, and we can bring this back around to adaptation as well, because the whole resilience thing, it's just so beyond fascinating that the resilience, it's the balance. And you could argue in life that you're always looking for the balance, but it is balance. Like, for instance, I would pride myself in the fact that, like, I do kind of, I have the courage to take the leap. I always have, you know? And, but at the same time, with the kind of heart and person I am, I give myself over completely. So I definitely go to the ends of when, you know, things aren't necessarily working and they can become a bit like negative effect on you. And I'm kind of like, no, it's fine, and do this. And I have been royally screwed over by a lot of people in my life in a way where it's kind of like, that resilience also comes with that little bit of a curse of like, until things get really bad, then it's when I go. And it's funny because you wouldn't think that. You'd be like, oh, you did this. And it's like, yeah, but like there's certain circumstances where like things were so bad that like I had to go. But I didn't choose to like victimize myself. I definitely got upset about it. But there was that whole element of like the bad soil, you know, and then the mental stability that it comes not only just from going through that, but just kind of like, it's okay, you'll get through it, we'll keep going, and there'll be a sun-shining day with water and balance every day. But the balance of that, I would say I do struggle with in a way that, you know, I definitely give myself over and won't stop giving because I am fully committed. And that's when it's like, that's when the heart-wrenching stuff, that's when the true learning happens, because it's kind of like, okay, you kind of reflect, and sometimes you do things and then, you know, you have responsibility, you take accountability, all that kind of stuff. But it's just, it's definitely a balance I wouldn't say I've at all mastered. And like, it's scary. I'm scared, you know, like it's a fear of kind of like, can I trust my own instincts that this is good soil again? Because you keep thinking it is. Yeah. And I'm not saying they're all bad soils. I'm just saying you kind of want the perfect soil. And you know what? It's never going to be perfect. So then you go into the bad soil and you're like, okay, maybe it could be a little bit more perfect.
Yeah, sure. But you are striving something. I love the word true healing. Was that what you said?
Not sure. I'm just rambling.
We'll check the tape. But I think because firstly, yeah, that was what I was thinking when you were talking. The true healing only happens when it really fucking hurts.
Yeah.
You know. But also it was funny what Anthony said, because I written down one of my enigmatic notes, journey fetish. That is one you don't have, because that's one that annoys me a little bit. When people are like, which probably says more about me than the people who do have it, but it's more like, I know some of these people who would just go, oh my God, I was in Indonesia, it was amazing. I was there, it was amazing. I was there, it was amazing. I was like, what are you running from? And then, but you're like, no, I actually want to be in this lovely thing, and that is what I'm moving towards. I'm trying this shit out. But that is also like, then it is easier for people, and then it makes sense with followers as well. It's easier to get on board with your journey, because people are like, she is explicit about where she's going. I figured this out, like, especially with stuff like music and stuff like that. I would always be like, no, I can't, you know, being really self-effacing. Like, oh yeah, no, I just play a bit of guitar in my bedroom. And then, I don't know who said it or where I got it from, but I heard someone say, like, no one's going to get on board with the thing if you're not, like, a lot of people do this. They don't set up the mark, because then they can't miss it. It's like, if you're not saying, I'm going to throw a ball, Anthony, I'm going to throw it through that top pane of your window, and then I fucking don't even hit the window, everyone's like, oh, that went wrong. So you're like, I'm just going to throw the ball. I'm not going to say what I'm aiming for. But then no one can help you. And then when you go, no, this is what I'm aiming for, I've realized a lot of people then go, oh, Bart, I heard there was this opportunity. Do you want to take it?
Yeah.
And it's like, and you're owning it and you be proud of it. But then, like you said at the beginning, I think, the failure is the thing. Yeah. You're going to have to marry.
But also the fact that, like, the only person who's really, really hoping you hit that window is you. Do you know what I mean? The only person, like that person you told him and you're like, oh man, I'm going to hit that plate window. You don't do it. That person isn't like, can't believe you didn't hit that window. You know what I mean? He's more like, man, he tried to hit that window.
And in that way, that's how you meant it. Yeah. True.
That is, and that's kind of like the putting the weight on, kind of like, you are your biggest and worst critic.
Yeah.
And there's that element of like, once you accept that it's kind of like it's all on you, and once you accept yourself for you and you know that you're doing your hardest you can, and you're in a way not so egoistic about it, in a way that it's like, it's not like, oh, I'm just telling you my story because like I just want to tell you my story. It's kind of like, no, I'm telling you my story because I want to tell my piece and I don't want to identify through it, but this is what I'm doing, and if you find comfort in that, great. So in the kind of way that like, hey, I'm going to tell you that I'm going to hit the window, but it doesn't, you and I understand, it doesn't matter if I hit the window or not, but I'm still going to try, and then we're going to experience it, and then and if we hit it, yay. If not, still kind of yay.
You fucking nailed it there. Still kind of yay. No, you fucking nailed it, because it is a story. If it's like, I'm just going to do this thing, I'm not going to tell anyone what I'm doing, I'm just going to do something, and no one will know if it's success or failure. Whereas actually, if I tell you the story of this is my aim, then we can live the story of the failure or the story of the success, and we can celebrate failure as well.
You're putting the weight on it, you know what I mean? It's just like, and if it's all in you.
Yeah, but it's also, but the story is not there if you don't own up to it. Then we can't be part of it. Whereas it's like
a little part of you wants the story, you know.
I think we were talking about, because I'm not so much into martial arts as you are, but I think we were talking about Izzy Adesanya, and he had a big loss, but his whole narrative was 2 years ago or something, and I think he won again and he lost again. I don't really follow it that closely, but he had this whole narrative where it's like, oh no, I'm the hero of my story. So sometimes the hero needs to get beat down, because otherwise not much of a story is it? And I was like, that's impressive. When you can see the long-term narrative. Yeah. I think Anthony is gonna...
No, that's.
Are you saying that I see the long-term narrative?
I think I've plamassed you enough in this podcast.
Okay, because take that, Dad. Remember earlier he was like, you don't see the...
But it's funny when you said that at the beginning about Dad. I was like, yeah, that doesn't necessarily resonate with me. But then, sure, he is your dad. Like, when I think about my kids, that's a very different story. So it's much easier to say.
This man knows me inside out and upside down. So I'm like, okay, I have to take what he's saying seriously. Like, I could have asked one of my friends, and it would have been a nicer review. But I was like, no. Let's pick someone who's going to.
Well, the other funny thing about parents, isn't it, that they've seen where we come from. Like, our friends know us 5 years, 10 years. Our parents,
they might see us as kids all the time as well, which is also like, that's why I also asked my brother. Yeah. And his negative thing was, you're too hard on yourself. And then, and then I was like, you're really holding back on other things, aren't you? She goes, oh yeah.
Oh, you know it, sister of mine.
Yeah. Well, Emily, that was
amazing.
Phenomenal. We'll be thinking about that for a while, I think. Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for sharing.
No problem.
Is there anything you'd like to leave us with? Is there anything, like a little message, any of your current projects you'd like to tell us about?
I'm not going to plug anything because I don't know. Because what if I don't hit the wall? No.
The lesson is not yet been learned. The true healing will only come when you
it's all in you. No, I think I'm going to leave with, I definitely like to learn things. And people have probably learned a few things here. But I think what I'll probably end with is just a synopsis of we're about adaptation. It's about change in a way, but it's about your perspective on change and your acceptance to life, and also like it's all gonna be okay. And I think that's a nice, like, if it's legacy work, if it's music, if it's online work, if it's, what were we talking about? I don't even know. Sci-fi. You're the tree. Like, all of these things is kind of like, pick your environment. Trust your gut. And be happy. Sorry, no. Because it is. It's just, in the end of the day, you can have the choice to be happy or not. Yeah. Things are tough, but you can still... Oh, yeah. No, actually, I'll leave with that. A great quote I saw one time, and it works very well for me in the gym. If you can change you can change a hard situation or experience into a slightly better one if you smile through it. And it does. Sometimes something's really bad is happening, and I'm like, okay, and it does help a lot.
Hard to argue with that. Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, guys.
This has been Weshtern Philosophy, and our rambling exploration and discussion on change and adaptation. Thank you to Emily for joining us. Thanks to everyone for listening. You can follow us on the socials at Weshtern Philosophy Pod. You can follow Emily at the link below. If you want to support the podcast, you can buy us a coffee via the link also below in the description. We'll be back next week with another topic. Shlán.